Hey everyone, so I already have a lot of stuff online for my IT 1050 class. I've been wanting to update it for a while, and I will give it a much more thorough update pretty soon. But right now, with COVID and transferring the courses to an all online format, I'm doing a kind of a quick and dirty conversion to online format that will be a big help in the short term, but definitely not the end goal in the long term. So I just want to go over what I did and what I'm going to be doing as we move through the class in the new format. So I do have links, all of the material is going to be in its own folder, but I do have this one link for common resources at the top that just gives you access to my GitHub account and my YouTube channel, which has not just my 1050 YouTube playlist and my 1050 GitHub repository, but it has that stuff for all my classes when they were live. And it might be a little outdated, and definitely my technology was pretty terrible, i.e., my microphone was really soft. But that being said, I'm adding new stuff. This is the first video I'm doing, so bear with me if I make any mistakes or do anything wrong. So I want these to be fast because, like I said, this is not the final state. So I'm just going to dive right into it. When you go into these course materials, we're on the course materials tab right now. So when you go into each one of these, all the stuff at the top is stuff that I typically would show in my other classes even before COVID. So, we have official documentation from Microsoft, W3 Schools, all that stuff. Then we have code examples for me on GitHub. We have YouTube lectures for me. We have little cheat sheet documents that I made. What's new, and this is my intermediary, not end goal, but my intermediary phase for trying to make this better for an online experience, is to use these fiddles. And so just a 5 second background, like JS Fiddle emerged a long time ago as like a really awesome site for writing and collaborating on JavaScript snippets without having the burden of an installed heavy duty IDE. You would just basically open up JS Fiddle, which you can do right here, JS Fiddle, and of course I can't spell it right. So this is what JS Fiddle looks like. It's more complicated than other Fiddle websites because it's HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. So you write all your stuff in here, and the result appears there. It's really awesome because you can just like fork it, and you can share it and save it, and just send somebody a URL. They have access to your code. You have a million different versions. Really, really convenient for quick, on-the-fly, portable coding and throwing ideas, bouncing ideas off other people. So it's perfect for teaching, really. So that's the idea about that. So just to give you an example, the topics for if you look at the course syllabus, the topics that we're doing for assignment one are variables and values and operators and expressions. So actually, I have opened my .NET Fiddle account right here, which has the fiddles, and you can see all the topics that I just mentioned listed there. So there's one for declaring variables and assigning values. There's one for there's one for operators and expressions. There's one for, actually, I think the very first one is simple IO types and values, then declaring variables and assigning values, then operators and expressions, and finally just a small one talking about type inference and language quirks. So that being said, these links are embedded into Blackboard. So I'm just going to close this. So if you go to course material, and you pick the two, you saw four fiddles there. Two of them are here and two of them are in operators and expressions. So variables and values, scroll all the way down to the bottom. So if we click on this very first one, it'll open up my fiddle in a new window. And this is .netfiddle.com instead of jsfiddle.net. The JS Fiddle kind of was the pioneer for this format of coding in a web browser and sharing it with people. If you set up an account like I did, you can see in the top right hand corner here, it says my name and my email address. Then it saves all of your fiddles. Also, you can choose your language. This is a .NET Fiddle, so obviously there's .NET programming languages. This is very important right here. The default mode is console, so it'll look more like Visual Studio with all of the heavy duty code that comes with that. But I have mine in script mode, and I suggest you do that too. That kind of means that you can ignore the objects and the classes, and just start off with pure inline procedural coding, which is good because once again, if you look at the new schedule that I have set up, I decided to try and just go over declarative programming first for a few weeks before we get into object-oriented programming. I've never really done that before, so this is going to be a new thing. I'm feeling good about it, so we'll see how it works. So anyway, this being set up in script mode is all pretty much, it sets the stage for just doing declarative programming right now, not worrying about objects, classes, all that stuff that kind of gets in the way. So this first one, I have some comments here describing what the code means. I'm not going to go through it all now, but I'll talk about it a little bit. So, for example, the very first thing, I thought to myself is, well, I need to tell somebody how to just like print something to the screen. Like hello world is the kind of the classic example. Now, like I said, I didn't go into great detail into the fiddles because I have all that other documentation in the course material that goes through the details of syntax ad nauseum. Like I have videos for all of this stuff, lectures for all this stuff that goes on for like 15 or sometimes half an hour or sometimes even like 45 minutes. So it's I really don't want to just repeat that stuff. It's there if you need it. You can clearly see from the comments that I wrote not only the summary comments, but the commenting of each line, what these things do. So here I'm printing out a literal integer, here I'm printing out a decimal, here I'm printing out a string, and here I'm printing out a Boolean value. So this is just getting people acquainted with the types of values, in particular integer, double, string, and Boolean, which are the four main types we work with in this course, and how to print them out to the screen. So that's pretty simple. And what's nice about it is, you can take this and, make changes, and it's not going to affect my, like when you get this, you basically have your own copy of it, and you can change it, and you could come up with an idea and write some new code, new code, and send it a new link to me. I think, yeah. So when I save it, it's the same URL. But I believe if I shared it with you guys and you either fork it or save a new version of it, you'll have your own URL that you can send back to me, which won't affect me, but it will show me your code. Okay, so going back to here, and the next one is, this one is a little bigger because this one is declaring variables and assigning values, which is kind of the foundation of procedural programming, declarative programming in C#. So here I go through the concepts of declaring variables, which store values, obviously. Here I show how to actually put values into the operators. Put values into the variables. And, to jump ahead a second, this is the assignment operator. The equals sign is the assignment operator in C#. And the value on the right must be the same type as the variable on the left. Like 5 is an integer. High there, because it's in double quotes, is a string. And true, because Boolean variables only have two possible values, true and false, is a bool. So these are all valid statements. So in essence, what I've done is I've created state. I've created a place named x, which will hold the value of 5 until I decide to change it. That's what we call state, because it's stateful. It remains there. And then the next thing I'm showing that you can do both of these things, both declare the variable and set the initial value in one compound statement. So it's like two statements in one. And this is more typical. So we don't usually really do this. Int x, and then the next line x equals 5. We'll usually just say int y equals 10 in one line. So that's not too complicated. Again, this is no different than the first example where we just print out the values that we just showed. So the x, the x, the s, and the b were just one way of assigning values to a variable, and then y, t, and c were just compound statements doing the same thing. So no surprise here when we see 5, 10 high there, the first three, and we see 10. Let's see, it should be X, Y. Oh, I printed them out in a different order than I declared them in. That's a good thing and a bad thing because it messed me up, so I had to think about it. So X and Y are 5 and 10. Right, 5, 10. So 5, 10, hi there, bye there, true, false. So now we're on line 26, and we're showing that reassigning a value wipes out the previous value. So X used to be 5, but now it's 999. So I'm going to change it, reprint it out, and then we see the 999. These three are reassigning the value of a variable to an expression containing a variable. So now we're kind of getting into expressions a little bit, which we'll describe in the next fiddle a little bit more. So x equals 20 plus y. Well, what's y? Y is 10, so that'd be 30. And then here we're doing, you could call it adding two strings together, but we call that string concatenation, which is also a type of expression. And here we have a logical operation, which is also an expression. So the two vertical bars are or. Like I said again, like all this stuff is documented in the other items in the list in the course material. So I really don't want to go into the rigorous detail right now in this video. Just kind of showing you how I laid it all out here again, and I'm going through it really fast to show you how you can kind of whiz through it. So the values of these expressions, this one's going to be 30, this one's going to be well, bye, 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 and this one's going to be true, because false or true means if either one of them are true, then it's true. So, and indeed 30 well, bye, 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 and true. Okay, so I did get a little bit ahead of the next fiddle, which is operators and expressions. Really quick, just to show you what I was talking about. Like, for example, I have Donnie's cheat sheet for C# operators, and I have Donnie's cheat sheet for C# expressions. So, like, I have all the operators here showing what they do. I have examples of the operators and expressions. I mean, like, so the details that I'm glossing over are not missing. They're just not in this video. And like I said, this is kind of like a step towards where I want to be. So eventually, I think I'll replace my old videos and instead go over this stuff that I'm showing you now a little bit slower so that I can get rid of the old stuff and just everything be new and based on the fiddle examples. And then I'll have brand spanking new videos and code examples. So that's good. So operators and expressions. This one's pretty small because expressions is not complicated. So I'll just read through this one. An operator is a language symbol such as plus or and that does something. Well, it's kind of vague, but it's just a symbol that does something. So plus adds two things together, right? So here you can see 5 plus 6. The arithmetic operator plus forms an arithmetic expression, which is an add procedure by adding two numeric values into a single numeric value. So that's every expression has the same purpose, and that's to resolve something complicated into a single value. No matter if it's a simple expression like 5 plus 6 or a more complicated one like this plus that divided by something else times whatever. So no matter how complicated the expression is, it always boils down to a single value. That's what an expression is. It's just a value. And that's what this next one is showing. Expressions of any type can be as complex as you want and reuse expression forming operators multiple times. So here we see you could call it a compound expression, or it's an expression, but it's from a programming point of view, it's doing more than one thing. It's not the plus operator just adding 5 and 6. It's the plus operator first adding 6 and 7 to form 13, and then taking that 13 and using the plus operator adding 13 and 5. So in programming, it's one step at a time. Like whereas a mathematician would just look at this and say that's an expression and the value is 18. programming is very incremental. So it's just a complex expression that takes multiple steps to resolve into a single value. Here's an easy one, and. So this is not an arithmetic expression. This is a logical Boolean expression, which means it only has two possible values, true or false. So and is not like plus. It doesn't add the things together. And wants to know if they're both true, because that's the only way that and is true, is if they're both true. In this case, they're not both true. One of them is false. And in that situation, and is false. And is only true if you have true and true. So that's why we see false right under the 18. And again, this is just an example of how you can make it more complicated than just one Boolean operator to form an expression. So here's two operators, a slightly more complicated expression. Or means only one of them has to be true. So true or false, if you look at just that part right there, is true, because only one of them needs to be true with an or. So that's true, that whole thing. So this expression becomes true or true. Well, that's obviously true, since both of them are true. And as we see, it is true. And then finally here, some operators, this is a little cool, such as, so I gotta fix that, such as plus. Actually, probably fix that right now. This is how awesome Fiddle is. I can actually just click save and that's it. So like the link takes you here and that's the way it is. Anyway, some operators such as plus can perform multiple jobs. Like me, I have two jobs. In this case, it's forming so it's not adding two numbers in this case. It's forming a string concatenation, which is a type of expression. So it's saying, oh, here's a string, and here's another string that's a space, and here's another string. So it's hello space world. So it's turning these three, just like these three numbers are getting added together, these three strings are getting concatenated, or if you will, squished together into one string. So that's one value, hello world. And then finally the last, and this is probably the most fun, and I'm not done with this yet because I'm sure I'll figure out more and people will ask me questions. But this is my first shot at it, type inference and language quirks. So this is what screws people up the most, this kind of stuff. Yeah, it's going to get bigger than this. So just my first crack at it was, okay, so sure, if you're just printing out a literal string /27, that's a literal string, and it's just 427. So, however, if you remove the double quotes, it becomes an integer divided by an integer. So 4 divided by 27. So C# treats literal numbers with no decimals as integers, and integer division discards remainders. Well, what's 4 divided by 27 with no remainder? 0. So that's why you see under the string 427, the output of 0. However, there's a technique in programming called casting. That's when you force the language to treat a number like a certain type. So I'm basically telling it there, 27 is not an integer, it's a decimal. So that forces it to treat the whole expression differently. Now it's treating the expression like a decimal expression. So when it divides 4 by 27, it actually calculates the real value. So that's kind of tricky. Console right line. So in this one, this is like, again, type inference. So you can't add a number to a string, but C# is smart enough to know that we're really just trying to append the string 10 to the string top, because it's just, I guess C# feels bad for us and doesn't want us to have to do any kind of like crazy coding to explain that we want that to be a string. So they're like, just let them write the number and we'll figure it out for them. So that actually does the job. That compiles, it runs just fine. It says top 10. So it inferred that the type of 10 was actually a string. I'm not going to leave it like this, but actually you can actually declare variables without writing the exact type. So if you have an integer, you can say var blah equals 5, and that will actually, sorry, let me do var blah equals blah blah. semicolon. That's what I forgot. I'm sorry. So that will work, and you didn't. The reason it works is 'cause even though you didn't specify it as a string, is because it figured it out. Since you gave it the value of a string, it must be of string. So var is basically like I'm declaring it, but and I expect type inference to uh, set the type. So there's no different than this. It's just lazier and a little more flexible, just in case you don't want to type the names of the strings. It's a little redundant. It's like, oh, here's a string, and you give it a string. Obviously, it's a string. You said it's a string twice. And then finally, so this quirks thing, I'm sure it's going to get bigger. And this is just a kind of a courtesy down here is people, the first time they work with console input and output, which means, like basically getting information into your program and getting information out of your program, people kind of struggle with anything that's not a string. So, console write is easy. It just prints something to the string. And console read is easy. It takes something that the user typed in and it stored it as a string. So actually, I'm just going to save this and run it really quick. So you notice down here it says, hey, give me a string. That's line 16's output. But you'll notice this little arrow. It's actually, the arrow is line 17. So line 17 is waiting for me to type something in, and it's going to take that string and put it into the name variable. So I'm going to say Donnie, and at that point, this variable right here, name, has the value of has the value of Donnie. However, the next instruction said on line 19 says, hey, give me an integer. And that one I can't, console.readline is not going to work because you can't put a string into an integer. So we have to do a parse. So anytime you want to change a string into another type, you name the type and you say dot parse, and then you wrap the console.readline into the middle of the parentheses on the type.parse. So that should turn it into an integer. If I type anything other than an integer, it'll crash. So I'm just going to say, like, what did it ask? It asked me for a number, any number, 99. And then it said, hey, give me a Boolean. So again, it's going to say, whatever the user types in, I'm going to parse that as a Boolean. So it has to be true or false. So I'm just going to say true. And then the very last thing is a long string concatenation where it says you gave me name, comma, age, comma, is awake, and is awake. So there it is. You gave me Donnie 99 and true. So that's pretty much like everything in a whirlwind that we want to learn how to do in the first 2 weeks. Actually, the first 4 weeks, because I think yeah. So like this week right now, we're just going to we're basically going to talk about, because when we talk, it's actually Monday right now, and we're going to talk for the first time tomorrow night, and none of you have seen this or watched it yet. So I'm going to give you you're going to have 2 weeks to go over all this stuff and do the assignment, which is not hard, and I'll be here to help, and the other students in the class will be able to help. So I wanted to keep this video short, and because I don't know what the reaction is going to be, I don't know what the fallout is going to be, I don't know what it's going to need extra, I don't know what changes I'm going to need. So I just want to do this, start it off, see how it goes, and I'm going to go from there. And with that, I'm going to end this and talk to you tomorrow night. Goodbye.